Hello guys, welcome back to Unique Arts. I'm Costco Picasso, but you can also call me Shenanigans, especially since today is Shenanigans for June 2024. So, uh, this video should be shorter than my last month's rendition, really. I guess I just don't have as much to talk about. Uh, to preface before I talk about what books I've read, I'm in the process of starting a company. I'm trying to do the things like bylaws and whatnot that I can do without having to spend money. So that's the idea, and then I'll get to actually making it official, which costs some money. But I've done it before, and then I'm trying to do like a professional like society. We're not gonna call it a society, but regardless, I'm mostly doing this with my brother, some few other people that mostly he's invited. I'm hoping they're on board. I don't know. I haven't the most. There's only been a handful of us that have been actually actively participating, uh, and a lot of this, I want to make it into an official company and like do like publishing stuff. I've mentioned that before, but most of the things we've been doing thus far have just been like a monthly symposium, like a monthly meeting. And it was actually just this past week, Liam and I, my brother at Liam's Lyceum, we both presented. And my presentation I actually published already on my channel. The one about Wells Cathedral was essentially the presentation I gave at that meeting. But uh, yeah, it's been fun. I'm hoping that I have people that are willing to help me essentially. I've actually had a business before and it kind of just didn't work out because I didn't get the help that I was expecting. But regardless, I have a fair amount of time to do it right now, but I don't have like a crazy amount of time anyway, in the sense of that I am working class and I have very little in the way of money. And so that's why I'm not really in the position right now to start even like the making it official like through the IRS and all these applications and whatnot, because I don't really have the money for it right now. But I'll get there. Regardless, you don't need to hear about that, I guess. But as far as the books I've read this month, I could say I've read 8, maybe 7. So I count the great courses, and that's actually the first two I want to talk about because I don't have physical copies. Is I did the History of England from the Tudors to the Stuarts, which I actually mentioned in my last month's video. I finished it on the 1st of June. I've already talked about it a bit though. It was good. It was interesting. It was a period of English history that I was not as acquainted with, so I figured why not. I also did the great course on the Celtic world, which I enjoyed. There were some things that well, generally speaking, I would say I enjoyed it. I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, it was informative. There's not a lot that I had hiccups with. In fact, like the only hiccup I could think of, and it was kind of early in the course, was she was mentioning something about homosexuality in the Celtic world because she kind of was all encompassing, and there's obviously we don't know a lot. But I think she was talking about the Greeks criticizing them and about like, oh, and we all know how the Greeks were super gay, pretty much. That annoyed me a little bit because that is a common misconception, actually, and I was a little annoyed that she was perpetuating that as an academic. Now I know it's not her expertise; she's an expertise on the Celtic world. Uh, but that if she's gonna bother saying something like that, then you know maybe she should fact check herself. Actually, no. It's a common understanding that the Greeks were a bunch of homosexuals, and although homosexuality in Greece was certainly more accepted, you could say, than it was in medieval Christian Europe. Uh, like as in the sense of you probably weren't put to death, you still were kind of ostracized about it. It was not socially acceptable in the general sense as has been pushed. That is not true. In fact, the study that idea comes from, that has been perpetuated by media and lots of people that don't know what they're talking about, is from the 80s, I believe, and he looked at a lot of work depicting homosexuality in art, and that was debunked. It was debunked as like I think in the 90s, even pretty much that um, most of those depictions actually, so not all of them were actually of homosexuality, and then the vast majority of them that were of homosexuality were depicted by satyrs, which, if you're aware, if a satyr is doing it, they're kind of seen as the representation for moral abhorrence. If a satyr is doing it, that means we're not a fan, essentially. So, as you can understand, if pretty much almost all not all of it, but almost all of our depictions of homosexuality are satyrs doing it, we're not a fan. In fact, we would say that is socially not accepted for the most part. So I don't, and that might be hard for some of you to hear in some regards, because that's like, it's one of those common ones that for some reason is super common, been super pushed. I think it's mostly because people are like, oh, gay rights and like whatever. But if you're gonna try to use historical stuff to back it up, it should at least be true, not a lie. So because the guy who tried to push that again has already been debunked for some time. So if anything, I was a little annoyed that another expert, even if she's not an expert on Greek stuff, she mentioned that and was like, it's just gonna, that doesn't help. This doesn't help. Like, I feel like what matters more is the truth, not trying to be funny about, oh, the Greeks are being hypocrites again or whatever. It's like whatever. Not that I think the Greeks were perfect, because there certainly was a lot that I'm not a fan of, but at the same time, they are like in many ways considered the foundation of the Western world. Although Egypt before them and what have you, but whatever. Okay, and then I'm almost done with another great courses. It's the Great Minds of the Medieval World. I only got a couple hours left in that one. It's pretty good. I've been enjoying it. Some people I had not heard of, especially what I did appreciate about this one is that she mentions, the lady for this one does mention some of the Muslim Golden Age thinkers, which I was aware of, but I pretty much don't know anything about any of those guys. And that's not the area I'm particularly interested in, but I mean, it's been nice, I guess, to learn more about that. Okay. And then on to physical books. I read well, Sans Volume 166. So I get the next volume in September, at least I'm supposed to. And this is just a collection of essays, really, but it's just here in book form, so I'm just counting it. I read through it all. It was kind of interesting. It's archaeological mostly, some natural history stuff. It was interesting. I don't read a lot of archaeology, but it was kind of boring. I think that's fair. They kind of expected, but lots of the like late Roman, Anglo-Saxon era burials. Burials were probably like the most interesting thing I thought about some of this, but it wasn't bad. I look forward to reading the other one later this year when I get it. And then also this one's really short, but it's the Cheddar Gorge and Caves. This is super interesting. I don't think of English uh, landscapes being looking like that, and I think typically they're not, although they're not exactly flat like the American plains or Midwest or something like that, but quite drastic, actually quite beautiful, and very interesting. It was very short, but I enjoyed that as well. Informative. I also read this one. So if anything, I read like 8 books this month, maybe 7, because this is a lot of pictures. But Sibley's Guide to Trees, it's not a lot. There's not a lot of words. Like you get pages like this, where most of the text is here. But of course, there's text throughout, but it's still a lot of illustrations. So I don't know if that counts. So maybe I've only read 7, or if this is half. So 7.5 maybe for this month. Either way, I'm above my goal. I only aim for about 3 a month, just because I know that last year I was terrible. I didn't even do that. So I didn't want to set my goals too high, but I've been smashing it at least the last couple months, even if I'm not including that. So that's good. Okay, I actually don't know where it is, but I have another book, and I have a physical copy somewhere. I wonder if my kids grabbed it. But it's by Erwin Panofsky. It's Gothic architecture and scholasticism. It's also pretty short. I think it was essentially just a lecture he gave that was transcribed and made into this. And he's been deceased for a little bit, so it's a little bit older, but last century still, of course, not that old. But either way, that was interesting. I was reading it before that presentation. I didn't actually end up using much of that because that was mostly applicable to Gothic architecture in France, not really at Wells Cathedral that I want to look at, because we were looking more at England. But it was still interesting, and it didn't take very long, so don't regret that necessarily. And then I read a book on Wells Cathedral, specifically on Wells Cathedral. I think there's been some like renditions of just informational text on Wells Cathedral. This is the most recent one. I believe it came out in 2009 by Elsa Vanderzee, and I had it shipped over. I got it for like 21 bucks, which is a little bit more than I like to pay for my used books usually, but I know probably not a crazy amount of print of this, and I had to get it shipped over from the UK. So well, and it was highly informative. I used this was like my main source for my lecture I gave. So thank you very much. Very lovely, very interesting. I didn't talk about a lot of it though because I was looking at a more specific period and whatnot, but there's a lot more if you are interested in Wells Cathedral. And then the last one I read, and which is what I also was using, perhaps my secondary source really for the lecture I did on Wells Cathedral, was Pseudo Dionysius. So I actually read a tiny bit of his before, his mystical theology, and it's in here. This is his collected writings. This is all of it. It's all in here, and this includes a pretty decent introduction and stuff like that, and notes at the back, and a few like short introductory. There's like 3 introductory essays. They're all pretty short, but it was enjoyable. I hadn't read all of his stuff. In fact, in a way, I didn't read all of the letters, which are the last of his things in here. So did the count. I'm not planning on doing that though, to be completely honest. Uh, they're just a few pages, but talk about various things. I'm sure I could get something out of it though, even if it's not. And it's not that long, so it wouldn't take that long. So maybe I'll do that. But I'm counting it anyway for this month, and I don't know if exactly I'm gonna get to it. But that's really it for my books. I didn't do much writing. I need to be better about writing. The problem is maybe you would call it ADHD in this day and age. I don't know. I was never diagnosed with that. I think that everyone getting diagnosed for that picked up a little bit more after a few years after I was born. So like I think I just missed that, or I would almost assume I have it, but I don't know. I just have a really hard time focusing on things and getting things done, and so I often am doing like a million different things at once just because I can't seem to focus. And perhaps that's not ADHD, and I don't really know what I'm talking about, which is also very likely. But the uh, I can't get I haven't gotten any writing done, to put it simply, I guess, in that regard too. And writing's not like my main shtick anyway, but I do have several ideas for things I want to write, and I haven't done it. So and I try to sit down and do it, and now I just end up leaving in the middle of these stories, which I have a couple that are unfinished, and I have a couple that I haven't even started because I'm trying to do other things, and I'm trying to do like make a little website or whatever for the thing, and I'm trying to do a lot of things at once, and I end up being relatively ineffective for all of them. So that's not good in many ways. I feel like I need to be better about just focusing better on doing one thing at a time, pretty much, but doing it well and getting it done quickly. Um, but regardless, and I mean the other stuff doesn't matter as much. I did watch some movies. There's some movies I'm interested in. Like I want to see Horizon by Kevin Costner's movie, An American Saga. I think the other part is coming out soon. Maybe part 3 is also coming out relatively soon. I don't have any money to go to theaters though, so I'm not gonna be watching it. I just feel like it'd be awesome to see in theaters, but I haven't seen that. Speaking of Kevin Costner, I've actually watched a lot of football movies this month. Not football. I watched a lot of baseball movies. I don't really like football. I like baseball. And then baseball movies. What did I watch? I watched Angels in the Outfield a couple months ago. Really like that movie. And then seen Field of Dreams, of course, it's a classic. I watched Major League for the first time ever. I watched The Rookie for the first time ever. I watched The Natural for the first time ever. I think that might be it. Now I just need to go rewatch Bad News Bears, like the newer one. I know it's an older one, but I've never seen it. But I like that movie a lot. And maybe the Benchwarmers or something for a lot of these stupid movies. But yeah, that's pretty much me. Let me know what you guys are reading, what you're doing. If you have any questions or comments on about anything, I guess. And if you are, I mean, if anyone is interested in joining such a symposium, I guess let me know. I do essentially need more people to help, but also more people to participate, the merrier. And you don't have to agree with me on everything. In fact, I would say that's probably wise. I'm not a big fan of Marxism. That's like the biggest ideology that I have like a hiccup against. Where it's like actually, I think Marxism can't like Marxist critiques and stuff when it comes to literary, critical theory stuff. I think they can be useful and insightful, but people who are strict Marxists and look at everything through a Marxist lens, I just feel like it's kind of ridiculous to be perfectly honest. But either way, if you're not a Marxist, there's probably some space for you, and if you are a Marxist, maybe I'll get over it. So there's that. But if you are interested, I guess let me know. I know not too many people watch my channel, but I feel like I need to carry some of my own weight in some regards because I feel like most of the people, like pretty much all the people that have been doing it along with me and my brother, and a lot of them, like I said, haven't been super active anyway, but they've pretty much all been invited by my brother. So I don't really have people I feel like I can ask. But oh well. Uh, that's me for this month. I'll see you guys next month for another Shenanigans. I'm gonna try to be more consistent with my videos. I've not been super great this past month, in June, but I've not been terrible, I guess, as I had been a few months ago or whatever. But yeah, regardless, I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.